Matthew Holt on the healthcare blog, and I am meeting with Carolyn Magill. Carolyn, last time I met her, about a couple of years back, was the CEO of Remedy Systems. She came to Health 2.0 and did one of our fun CEO chats, in which we found out that the most important thing about Carolyn is that she was often this CEO nonsense was actually a really cool extreme skier. So, Carolyn, first most important question is, have you been getting your extreme skiing in?
You know, I actually had 2 great trips this year. Now that you mention it, I had the pleasure of skiing in St. Moritz in Switzerland, where it snowed the entire time.
That's great.
And then had a weekend out in Montana at Big Sky, which might be my new favorite mountain.
All right. Well, so that probably indicates where the new headquarters of your new company.
Yes, I like how you think.
So, Park City Solutions, that tech company, was set up purely because the guys who ran it wanted to live in Park City. That's where the headquarters were.
Smarter than I am. Jeez.
Absolutely. So now for the last few months, you've been actually a bit more than that. You've been at Aetion. You've about to announce a very large Series B, and there was a pretty big Series A before you arrived last year. So tell us, in the short strokes, what does Aetion do?
Yeah, so we're a software platform company, and we deliver real-world analytics, evidence, focusing on supporting biopharma and payers to engage in value-based care.
Okay, a lot of good buzzwords in that, including the value-based care one. So let's get the basics started. So this is a technology company putting together multiple different data sources and then doing interesting analytic stuff with it for healthcare. We'll talk a bit about how that gets applied in a second. So what's the origins of the company? And then tell me a bit about how you got involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were founded by 2 Harvard Medical School professors who are pharmacoepidemiologists. They have been looking at the safety, efficacy of medications for targeted populations for decades, and finding that the normal ways of approaching these kinds of questions are through SAS programming or through tools and methods that aren't as consistent or transparent as they need to be for scientific and academic purposes. And they also realize that there's a lot of what we do that can be replicated, that could be integrated into a technology platform to do that in a reliable, transparent way. And so they put their heads together and created this incredible platform about 5 years ago. By the time I connected with them, they had significant traction with biopharma organizations who were leveraging the platform around safety, efficacy, understanding the causal impact. So if you see certain behaviors in a population, or you see that people are taking a certain drug, you want to understand what kind of a result does it have in the real world. And that's what's most critical. You have these randomized clinical trials that in a pristine setting can measure what happens with patients and how they respond and whether they take the meds and side effects they experience and the like. In actuality, our lives get in the way, right? So we don't take that med because the pharmacy is too far away, or someone in our family saw an ad on TV that mentioned some side effects that we're concerned that might happen to us. Those are the kinds of real world experiences that start to indicate how a drug truly performs and whether it actually improves the quality of care that patients taking it receive. And so these are the kinds of things that Sebastian Schneeweiss and Jeremy Rassin, our 2 founders, tried to tackle and codified that in our platform. When they connected with me, I was just blown away by the idea that they're able to assess causal impact. Take this intervention and understand what the result is for this specific population. It was mind-blowing. I think it's absolutely what the healthcare industry needs.
So wind the clock forward. You joined sometime last year, is that right?
I did, yeah.
And they'd raised, they've been going a few years, raised, I think it was 10 or 11 million at that point, just before you showed up. And then today you're announcing how much?
Yeah, so we raised 12. We are announcing 36.4 million. So we have, it's about 50 million total in our investments to date. So that
should cover your bonus for the first 6 months or so, I would think. Yeah.
It gives us a good runway. Absolutely. Okay.
So let's talk about two things. So first off, one of the people in this year in this new round is not the lead NEA, but one of the companies invested is Amgen Ventures, which I guess gives a hint about who's using this stuff. There are a lot of companies doing sort of analytics, genomics stuff for pharma who are basically around, I'm thinking of Genus Healthcare and others who are thinking around new kinds of how do you figure out which drug is going to come out of the production process. Sounds like you're more at the other end. You're more at the drugs in the real world phase, which obviously is a huge problem that people have had trouble working with. But as you said, in value-based care, a lot of the issue has been no one's really been well. Some people have been rewarded, but no one's really been rewarded for getting this right. There hasn't really been the business model of pharma companies and, for that matter, providers and payers, to figure this out completely yet. A lot of argument about ACOs and value-based care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sounds like you're a huge bet on that world is going to change, and that the real world impact of drugs is going to be incredibly important, both for the people who manufacture them and the people who pay for them. So can you talk a bit about where you are in that transition and kind of where, in the Gretzky going to where the puck will be, skating to where the puck will be, where you are?
Absolutely. And so where this gets very exciting for me is that my background is primarily in the payer and provider space, and working on behalf of United Health Group, of Evolent Health, with value-based care arrangements with those hats on. And what I found is that in those environments, we oftentimes make decisions, on generalities or not having the specific insights relative to our populations. And so what Aetion has done is create a platform that enables more targeted analysis. And, that coming together really creates a neutral platform for biopharma companies and for payers and at-risk providers to understand what's happening in their specific populations and do it in a neutral way, so we can control who has access to what data, as an example. And then one of the most exciting things about our platform is that at the end of every study that you execute, you press the final execute button and up pops the report, 200, 300 pages, depending on the nature of the study that you've run, that lists out all of your assumptions. And that's important because in these value-based care contracts, in my experience, oftentimes we disagree about what parameters to set at the outset. At the end, when there's reconciliation, it can be difficult to go back and say, wait, which assumptions did we apply? And, is this restratified for my population and the like? And so what the Aetion Evidence Platform does is demystify that process and do it immediately.
Yeah, there's been obviously a lot of struggle in the value-based care about defining what an outcome and a value is. So that's probably very helpful. How fast? I mean, you've been in this world for a while, but obviously it's not yet the dominant part of the healthcare world. How fast do you think we are moving towards value-based care on the private pay side? Obviously, Medicare is going backwards and forwards, and how big an opportunity do you think this is? At what stage for Aetion, or are you laying the groundwork for something that's going to be huge in 10 to 20 years rather than 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, when I think about these questions, I think about what makes the most sense for us as individuals, for us as citizens, for us as consumers of healthcare. And in every other aspect of our lives, we pay for the value that we get. We pay for the impact. Does it work? Does it not work? And we don't keep shelling out our own dollars for things just based on volume, right? And so it feels like absolutely the time is now. I do believe that what we've done over the last 10 years has gotten us to a place where now we understand how to structure these kinds of arrangements. We understand the logistics and administrative burdens associated with integrating value-based care contracts into a workflow. So again, how things actually can be adopted in the real world, recognizing that we've made significant investments in infrastructure and technology. We have people who are already providing care and accessing data. Those are the kinds of things that stand in the way sometimes from actually affecting change. And it's maybe not so interesting as the latest new technology. It's about paying specific attention to how to make something actually work given where we are today. So I feel like what we have done over the last 10 years is iron those kinks out. So now we're finally at a place where we can hit the ground running. We've seen tremendous traction, with next-gen ACOs as an example, and in the Medicare world in particular, with payers, with at-risk providers, specific to medical care. And so pharmacy and drug costs become the next logical evolution of that. And look, I don't think it stops there. I think from there, as we're assessing causal impact, it's relevant to every kind of clinical intervention we do. And the more advanced we become with precision medicine, the more we know about specific individuals' needs and responses, then the opportunities are limitless with respect to the application for understanding causal impact and doing that in a replicable, scalable way.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating, and it behoved me on today of all days with a certain young Silicon Valley CEO showing up at Congress. I wanted to talk about that because we've got a world in which the more and more data you can collect about people, about their healthcare use, but also what's going on in their lives and their home, et cetera, becomes more useful to do these impacts. Since you go towards personalized medicine, of course, that's where we want to go. On the other hand, we've got this craziness going on right now with starting with politics, now going on to sort of data use and the whole Facebook and Cambridge Analytica thing, which is right in the news at the moment. Tell me a bit about your data sources, and then when you get to the interesting stuff, how do you manage this issue around perceived sort of privacy and intervention in people's lives, which a debate which hasn't really happened in healthcare, but people are starting to sniff out given the amount of de-identified data that's out there now, and you're always going to be getting towards identified data at some point. So talk a bit about your philosophy around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the data sources, one thing that I've learned over the last 20 years in healthcare is that we're somewhat fragmented in how we capture data and certainly how we share it among stakeholders. So one of the things that's most important to Aetion and how we've built our platform is to ensure that it's data agnostic, which means that we can take data from an electronic medical record as an example, claims from patient registries, patient reported outcomes data, survey data, and all of these things start to inform a fuller picture of the patient experience. So it's important for us that we can accept data the way it is and also do meta-analyses so that we're able to compare across data sets and understand what's truly happening in a more holistic way, even taking things like socioeconomic factors into account as an example. With respect to data security, go back to my time at United Health Group where we really understood the criticality of protecting data. I've actually read HIPAA as an example. One of my early jobs back in the day was understanding what it meant and how to ensure that we are safeguarding protected health information and doing that all along the value chain. So that is very important to us. I actually have spent some time in the compliance world too in my past. And so recognize that it's not only about the infrastructure that you build, it's also about the processes and the awareness of users who have access to these data, what they're using it for, and ensuring that all along the way we have an audit trail as an example. And we're very, very committed to safeguarding the data and being transparent with our clients around what we're using it for and why it matters, so that it holds up against, an inquiry from patients as an example, or from the New York Times or members of Congress, as you've talked about what's happening today.
Yeah, and that story will go on, and I suspect that you're seeing sort of some rebel patients saying, "Why aren't I getting paid for the use of my data?" And clinical trial recruitment and other stuff is an area where there are a lot of people doing a lot of interesting things around this. A lot of that hit me in my world, and it's interesting to see how this plays out. Given that frankly the data that's been released from Facebook, I would say relatively trivial, even if the impact of its use by Cambridge Analytica and Trump and everyone else was not trivial. Potentially. Anyway, who knows? That's another topic for another day. But I think the whole patient data being used in healthcare is going to continue to be a big deal. But we do know that we do a terrible, as you said, it's fragmented. We do a terrible job of getting patients access to their data right now, and we do a terrible job of using their data to figure out what should be done. And that's obviously the role you're in. Okay, so just to wrap, so where you guys are raising money, so where are you? Can give me a sense of number of employees, give you some flavor of customers divided between pharma and payers, how many, what you can tell me about run rate, and I'll ask you what good looks like in a few years. But just give me a state of the snapshot of the company right now in terms of employees, number of customers, what you can tell me about run rate and revenue and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're about 100 employees. We are headquartered in New York City with two other
Soon to move to Montana, we get that right.
Oh, so to move to Montana. I love this idea. We also have a presence up in Boston, which has been, a great source for us, for our data scientists and others who have great knowledge in our space. And then we have a couple folks out in LA as well, so that we have all our bases covered with our clients. And we're primarily serving large global biopharma organizations as well as payers. And our payer clients, they're national, they're regional, and then more local. We're spanning all.
And roughly what's the mix between them?
So at this point, most of our traction has been in the pharmacoepidemiology space with biopharma, and we're just getting off the ground with a handful of payer clients.
And can you give me any numbers as to what your run rate is now and what you expect?
So I'm going to hold off on sharing revenue numbers at this point, but just share with you that we are growing at a 50% clip and very excited about where this takes us in the years to come.
That sounds very exciting. Well, you certainly got your hands full, Carolyn, so congrats on the round today, and look forward to seeing how Aetion does in the future. I've been talking with Carolyn Magill.
Thank you so much. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks. I'm talking with Carolyn Magill. She's the CEO of Aetion, which raised $36 million and change today, and she doesn't get to drink champagne at 6 in the morning, wherever she is.
I like it.
Nice talking to you, Carolyn. Take care.
Take care.